Welcome to the Ignorant Artist Podcast, where we take art history seriously, but not too seriously. With this episode, we begin an exploration of illuminated manuscripts. First, we'll explore the materials, where it all begins. As a printmaker, I spend a lot of time thinking about surfaces. The paper I use, the way the ink sits on it, the way it pushes back. Watercolor paper has tooth. It has memory. Press into it, and it remembers. That relationship between maker and surface is something I think about every time I work. Turns out, that conversation is about 1,000 years old. Today, we're going inside the world of illuminated manuscripts. Not the gold, not the color, not the astonishing patience of whoever held the brush. We're starting somewhere more fundamental than that. We're starting with the animal. You may be familiar with a diploma being called a sheepskin. This episode will make the reason why very clear to you. This is the skin of the thing.
You are not looking at paper. You are looking at an animal. That is the first thing you need to understand about illuminated manuscripts. Before the gold leaf, before the ultramarine ground from crushed lapis lazuli, before the extraordinary patience of whoever held the brush for the 10,000 brushstrokes it took to complete a single page. There was an animal, a calf, a sheep, a goat. And there was someone who knew exactly what to do with the skin. The material those manuscripts are written on is called parchment or vellum, and the two terms get used interchangeably, which drives specialists quietly insane. They are not the same thing. Parchment is the broader category, made from the split and scraped skin of sheep, goat, or other animals. Vellum, strictly speaking, comes from calf. The finest vellum, called uterine vellum, was made from the skin of stillborn or very young calves. It could be prepared so thin you could read through it. There is ongoing scholarly debate about some of the finest medieval examples. Recent scientific analysis using DNA testing has suggested that some so-called uterine vellum may actually be carefully split and scraped regular skin, worked to an extraordinary thinness by a skilled hand rather than by the youth of the animal. We may never know for certain. What we do know is that the people making it were capable of things that are difficult to replicate today. This is not tanning. That distinction matters. Tanning chemically transforms skin into leather. Parchment is made by a completely different process. The skin is soaked in a lime solution to loosen the hair. Then it is laced to a wooden frame under tension while still wet. And then it is scraped, repeatedly, with a lunellum, a curved blade, as it dries. The scraping and the tension working together is what creates that translucent, almost luminous quality you see in the finest examples. The skin is not being preserved. It is being transformed. The result is a completely different material. Stable, smooth, with a surface that accepts ink and pigment in a way that no paper quite replicates. And it is loud. Stretched wet skin drying under tension creaks and snaps as it dries. Imagine working in a scriptorium, the room where manuscripts were produced, with racks of drying skins around you. The building is talking. The material is alive in the most literal sense, still moving, still responding to the environment, for days after the animal's death. Now consider the economics. A single large Bible required the skins of hundreds of animals. The Codex Amiatinus, produced in Northumbria and northern England around 700 AD, is one of the oldest surviving complete Latin Bibles. Scholars estimate it required the skins of more than 500 calves. 500 calves for one book. That is not a book. That is a livestock operation, It reframes the monastery entirely, not as a retreat from the world, a quiet place of prayer and contemplation, but as an industrial enterprise embedded in the agricultural economy of its region. The monastery needed land. It needed cattle. It needed infrastructure. It needed supply chains. The spiritual project and the material project were inseparable, because you cannot make a Bible without calves, and you cannot raise calves without land, and you cannot hold land without political relationships. And those political relationships shaped which manuscripts got made, who commissioned them, and what they contained. The people who made the parchment were not the monks. That is another thing most people don't know. The parchmeners, as they came to be called, were a distinct trade. Eventually, in the great medieval cities, they organized into their own guild, separate from the scribes and the illuminators who would use their product. There was a whole supply chain behind every manuscript page, and almost none of it has been written about in the popular histories. The parchmener prepared the skin, the scribe wrote the text. The rubricator added the red headings and initial letters. The illuminator added the decorated borders, the miniature paintings, the gold. 4 different people, 4 different specializations, working on the same page. Division of labor in the scriptorium was as sophisticated as anything in a modern production facility. And it produced objects of such extraordinary quality that they have survived for over 1,000 years. Here is something worth sitting with, particularly if you make things by hand. The parchmeners scraped the skin to create a surface. The illuminator then worked that surface with ink and pigment. 2 people, 2 processes, 1 material. As a printmaker, you know this relationship. The block, the ink, the paper. The surface is never passive. It always pushes back. Vellum has tooth. It has memory. Press into it and it remembers. That glowing quality in the finest manuscripts is not just the material itself. It is the record of the maker's pressure, the maker's hand, the trace of someone working. 1,000 years later, under the right light, you can still feel it. The argument that vellum makes, just by existing, is the argument that every handmade object makes. That the human touch leaves a record. That the record matters. That there is something in an object made by a specific person, in a specific place, under specific conditions, that survives the making and speaks across time. That is not a sentimental argument. It is a material argument. The vellum proves it.
500 calves for 1 book. Think about that the next time you're in a museum in front of one of these treasures, standing in front of one behind glass. Someone raised those animals. Someone scraped those skins. Someone sat in a cold room and worked that surface for months. And here it is 1,000 years later. Still here. Next episode, we go inside the scriptorium, the room where it all happened, the smells, the hierarchy, the extraordinary division of labor that produced some of the most beautiful objects human hands ever made. If this episode hits you somewhere useful, please like and subscribe. It helps more people find the show. I'm Don Hudgens. This is Ignorant Artists. I'll see you in the next one.